The Lumo project is a groundbreaking, multi-language biblical resource that is set to transform the way in which people engage, discover and study the life of Jesus through the Gospels. For the first time, the complete unabridged text of Matthew, Mark, Luke and John have been faithfully and inspirationally brought to life to revolutionize the way in which we experience the Bible. Created to be a 21st century outreach and education resource for people across the world, the Lumo project will encompass a multitude of translations and languages.
We're really excited to have Hannah Leader with us today, and Hannah is the producer and the brains behind the Lumo series that we've been using a lot in our online services. So Hannah, it's brilliant to have you. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am by trade a lawyer, but a film lawyer in the film business, and worked in it for 40 years. And slowly, in the latter years, started doing a lot of film production as well myself. I'm also a Christian. And for decades, my Christian life and my film business life were two entirely different worlds. They had no crossover, you know, the old Venn diagram, those two circles never met. I don't know why, but I never told people about my Christian life. I never told my friends at church about my film life. It was just, and then 21st century struck and my church got screens. And I thought, wow, I was in charge of all the children's work and the children's worship. And I thought, I can use all these film materials now with the children. This is going to be fabulous. Then I looked at the film materials available, which mostly come from America. And they all had a white, blue-eyed Jesus, American. And my children, because at that time I was living in northwest London, so my children were, I had one white child and 59 non-white children from everywhere in the world, but not white with blue eyes. And I thought, there's nothing here educational about this. There's not, you know, there's nothing for them to relate to. This is just wrong in every way. And so I thought, you know, at our church, we used to go to the pub for Sunday lunch afterwards with the vicar, and a few of us always used to go. And we were sitting there and we'd had a couple of drinks, and I said, you know what, I can do this. I can film this much better myself. And then we can use it in our church. That's why I did it, for children. And I think it's fabulous that the Archbishop of Canterbury is now saying, we've got to all remember that Jesus was a Middle Eastern Jew. Because I've been saying that for 20 years, and now people are starting to look at it. So that's how I got into the whole thing, not really realizing how massive it would then become.
It really has become, because you've filmed essentially all four Gospels. Yes. Are available, and so we've used a number of them already in different ways. So how did it come? How did you pull it together? How did you make it happen?
Well, I first of all thought that what I was doing was making short films that you can use in a service, which is probably what you've been doing a bit. And I thought that was the right way to go. And so I actually used some of my money and borrowed some money from a friend. And I went to Morocco and filmed the Christmas story and the Easter story for all four Gospels, thinking that churches would buy this stuff, because I was used to that worship house media, you know, where you can buy the short clips. So I thought this was the kind of business model. I then took this around to like the Bible societies, and they all said, well, it's absolutely fabulous, but we haven't got any money. Which is always what they say, right? And then I realized I had to do this differently. First of all, the money must come from America. It's the only place where churches have any money. And then we need to be able to give it away and not sell it. Mm-hmm. So I, with a lot of help from the American Bible Society, which is the only people who have money, and and some good people at Zondervan and various other places, I eventually was put in touch with the Green family, who run the Hobby Lobby stores in America. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and they have a foundation. And I took the examples of what I'd done over and showed it to the family. They agreed to fund shooting all of the rest of the Gospels on the basis I gave them then to their foundation, and they would arrange for these to be exploited around the world. Because they, like me, wanted these to be free to use for people. Now, obviously, in America and the UK, people can buy the DVDs. Yeah. But the real reason that we both wanted to do this, was wonderful though that is, that English-speaking churches get to use them. What's really amazing is to provide something to people in the world where English is not their first language, where they have their own Bible that the Bible societies have provided them, which is their language, that's their Bible, that's the Bible they know, not a translation from the English Bible. Mm. So what you want is to present them with a film with Jesus teaching, using the words that they know from their Bible, so it's their Jesus, their experience. Yeah. And it's not an American import. It's not someone saying, this is our culture, we're putting it on you. So that's why it was important for Jesus to be Middle Eastern, because everyone everywhere in the world can relate to that, because that's historically what he was. And then over the top, and we did it by voiceover, and not like the Jesus film did, for instance, with actors speaking, because then you're not in dubbing territory. No. Then each country can have someone read their Bible over the top. And by the end of 2021, we will have 1,000 languages.
Goodness.
We're over 500 already.
I saw you had a huge list of languages, and just the idea that it's the same visual, but an indigenous language of that particular place is just incredibly powerful. And it's just the word of God, and that's what's really awesome as well. Yeah,
but it's their word of God that they know and love. You know, you love the words that you know, and those are the words you want to hear.
Yeah.
And of course it works for languages that are not written down. I mean, a lot of the world's languages do not have written Bibles. They have audio Bibles, and they have the films now.
So what were some of the challenges of making this happen?
Well, I mean, once we had the money, then it was getting it done. Now, one of the challenges is there's 4 Gospels and they're not all the same. So we had massive spreadsheets. I mean, just to do Easter, 4 versions, it would be straightforward if you went and filmed all of one and then all of another, but that would be very, very expensive. So when we're doing Jesus curing the blind man, you've got to do all the versions of that. And in some of them, there's 1 blind man, and sometimes there's 2, or there's 2 beggars, there's only 1. Or it's never quite the same. And it's very tricky to work out who was present at the time. You've got to read back in each gospel each time and forward to work out whether that in that version that disciple was there or not there. And we did have some help from quite a lot of theologians. Tom Wright helped a lot.
Okay.
When it's like tricky theological stuff. Well, I don't want to be the person making, you know. And then we had some academics who helped as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, that was the really tricky thing. That and doing Christmas in July in Morocco. There's
not going to be any snow-covered trees, really, are they?
It was so hot. Never going back there in July again. It was unspeakably hot. The cameras were like melting.
Oh, goodness. So do you have any particular significant stories of the impact of the Lumo series so far?
Well, I travel around the world quite a bit, or I did until this lockdown, talking to people.
Yeah.
And it is amazing because you end up in a hall and there's like 1,000 people and they've all seen it, and they've all seen it in their language. And that really moves me. I mean, someone showed me a picture that's been taken in Africa, which had a white cow that they tied to a post, and they were projecting the film onto the side of the cow because it was the only thing they had white enough to actually show the film. And it's like,
it's a very still cow.
You just know this film is traveling because they do it on little portable projection devices that. I mean, none of this would have been possible without the internet happening the way it did, and digital technology being the way it did, because now almost anywhere with a tablet people can watch the films. But 20 years ago that wouldn't have been the case. You had to take a projector around and set up a
because that was the image of the Jesus film, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. That's what they used to do, set off across the jungle with their projector and their screen.
And I suppose it's the kind of 21st century version of that, and missionally as well. It's building on that tradition. So, in the sense of storytelling with Jesus, what's your take on the importance of story, getting the story across in regards to Lumo?
Well, when I wanted to choose a director to do the filming, I went to a documentary director, because what I wanted to do was not show a big Hollywood dramatic reenactment of something that never happened, but a documentary of something that did happen. So I wanted people to feel as though they are there at that time, in that place, in the same way you do when you watch one of the documentaries on the BBC and their film crew is there as the thing happens. Mm-hmm. So we have to imagine that we're there as this is happening. So you can tell a story, but unless you can actually feel like you're there hearing Jesus tell that story, so it's a massive difference. So when you're doing the Sermon on the Mount, you should feel you are sitting there on that hill watching that.
Yeah. Or
when he's being baptized, you're at the edge of the river and you're watching that, because then you're part of the story. Because that's what Jesus tried to do. By telling the parables and teaching the way he did. He was trying to make people part of understanding we're all part of God's plan. We're all part of his story. We're all part of Jesus's story. This isn't something that happens in the past that's made up, or it's not a big Hollywood event. No. And that's what it's all about, being part of the story.
So what are your future plans? What are your future hopes for Lumo?
Well, for the gospel films, obviously, it's always been my dream to get to that 1,000 languages, because it was something in the early days, the Bible Society said to me they had Bibles in 1,000 languages. I thought, right, if you've got Bibles in 1,000 languages, that means the translations exist in 1,000 languages.
Yeah.
But that means we can do it. So the day we get there, which might be the end of 2021, will be a massive party for me. That is the most important thing. So 1,000 languages for the Gospels, and then we've been asked to make an Old Testament film to be used when they're using the Gospels in a missionary capacity. Now, being shown to people who are not Christian. If you don't have the backstory, it's hard to understand some of the things that come out of the Gospel. You really need a solid understanding of the Old Testament to understand what Jesus is going on about in the New Testament. So we've already done 3 weeks shooting. Then we had to stop because of COVID with the first 5 books of the Bible.
Wow.
Done slightly differently, because as you can imagine, you can't do it word for word without leaving anything out, because I'd die of old age before I got to the end. So what we've done is pick up what the main is. It's called The Covenant, and it's all about God's covenant with man, which is really what you need to understand to move on to the Gospels. So it starts with the creation and flicks quickly through until it gets to Abraham, when we tell the story of Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, and we end at Moses' death on the edge of Canaan, waiting to go into Canaan. So that's the end of the film. And we're telling it all through Ezra.
Okay, retelling the story.
Retelling the story, yeah. Because one of my, Bible Sunday, right? So my favorite reading on Bible Sunday is where Ezra stands up and reads the Bible to the people. And then the very last words of that is, and then the people left and they understood what he had been reading. And I thought, yes, that is exactly what I'm trying to do. It's not just reading the Bible, it's understanding it.
Yeah.
So what he was doing was exactly that. He was saying, right, I've got to get these people on board with their faith again. So I'm going to read it to them so they can understand it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do. Retell it with pictures. Make it even easier for people to understand it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And we encourage everybody to check out the Lumo YouTube page and to just watch the Gospels as you intend to get the story out there.
Fabulous. Lovely.
Thank you very much again.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.